네, 여러분 안녕하십니까. 인사이드아웃 화상기자간담회 와주신 여러분들 진심으로 환영합니다. 전 오늘 진행을 맡은 유시연입니다. 고맙습니다. 네, 오늘 통역에는 제 주영주 씨가 수고를 해주시겠고요. 그리고 저도 화상간담회는 처음이라 굉장히 흥미진진한 행사가 되지 않을까라는 생각이 듭니다. 방금 전에 영화를 보고 이쪽으로 옮기셨는데요. 저는 개인적으로 울다가 웃다가 아주 감동적으로 본 영화였습니다. 오늘 화상기자간담회를 하실 분은 이 영화의 감독님이시죠. 몬스터 주식회사 업 이후에 6년 만에 작품을 만드셨는데요. 업이라는 작품으로 이미 아카데미상을 타신 감독님이십니다. 영화 보시면서 느끼셨겠지만 굉장히 인간과 인생에 대한 시선이 따뜻한 분이 아닐까 생각이 되거든요. 이번 68회 칸 국제영화제에서 처음 월드 프리미어로 공개가 돼서 언론의 극찬을 받은 작품이기도 할 텐데요. 궁금하실 테니까 빨리 감독님 모셔보도록 하겠습니다. 피트 감독님 나와주시기 바랍니다.
Hello, Pete.
네, 안녕하세요. 잘했군요. 네. 자, 그럼 오늘 행사 참여하신 우리 기자분들께 인사 한 말씀 부탁드리겠습니다.
So, Pete, congratulations on the movie and thank you for being with us here today. Would you like to start by saying hello to the Korean press?
Yes. When they told me we were going to do a Korean press conference, I thought, great, we get to go to Korea. So I'm sort of disappointed that it's only on video, but I get to see you anyway. Hello.
굉장히 유쾌하신 분인 것 같습니다. 자, 이 인사이드 아웃이라는 작품은 정말 신기한 작품이에요. 뭐 누구나 머릿속에 감정을 컨트롤하는 존재가 있어서 한다는 얘기인데 도대체 어떻게 해서 이런 아이디어가 나와서 이런 영화를 만드시게 됐는지 기획 의도가 궁금합니다.
So raves about the movie, and it's fabulous, but it's also very creative and very clever. And so how did you come up with the idea that in Inside Out there will be 5 emotions that are beings in our heads, and they're actually controlling us? How was this story born? How was it conceived?
Well, the movie kind of started because I have a daughter who at the time was 11, and she had gone from being a very active, goofy little kid to being a little more kind of serious and laid back, you know, as an 11-year-old. And I thought, I wonder what's going on inside of her head, you know. And then I thought, whoa, if we could personify emotions as characters, that is what animation does so well. These strong, opinionated, caricatured, bigger-than-life personalities. And that's what we set out to do. So the film then, of course, took 5 years of hard work and rewriting and great collaboration on the part of everybody, a great studio and amazing actors, etc. So that's how it started.
11살짜리 딸을 가지신 분들은 참 많은 분들이실 텐데 유독 어떻게 감독님은 딸을 보고 이런 생각을 하셨는지 대단하신 분인 것 같습니다. 자, 그럼 오늘 오신 기자님들의 질문을 받도록 하겠습니다. 궁금한 게 있으신 분은 가볍게 손을 들어주시면요, 저희 진행위원이 마이크를 전달해 드리도록 하겠습니다.
So we'll open the floor to the press, and we've got our first question.
네, 말씀해 주시죠.
예, 저 한국의 뉴스위 김재범 기자라고 합니다. 예, 영화 너무 재밌게 잘 봤고요. 이제 궁금했던 게 이제 질문이 이제 2가지인데, 굳이 이제 그 영화 속에서 이제 감정을 얘기할 때 이 5가지 감정이 왜 어떻게 이제 선택했는지가 제일 궁금하고요. 구체적으로 인간의 감정 중에 이 5가지를 선택한 이유가 궁금하고, 그리고 여러 그 전반적인 영화 장면 중에서 제 기억으로는 그 군데군데 몇 군데가 있었는데 이제 구체적으로 기억나는 곳이 이제 그 라일리가 이제 그 미네소타에서 그 샌프란시스코 쪽으로 집으로 이사 오면서 올 때 그 장면이었었는데 몇몇 장면들이 일반적인 그 애니메이션 속의 그 질감하고는 많이 좀 틀리더라고요. 그러니까 특히 뭐 이번 인사이드 아웃 같은 경우는 몇몇 장면에서 그 일반적인 애니메이션의 그 작업 방식하고는 좀 다른 그 어떤 기법들이 들어가 있는 게 아닌가 하는 생각이 드는데 어떤 게 있었는지 그 부분이 좀 궁금합니다.
2가지 질문입니다.
So Pete, we've got 2 questions. The first question being that why these 5 emotions? There are so many human emotions out there, and why these particular 5, and how are they selected? And the second question is that, well, looking at the movie, it seems like there are a lot of different locations, and it's also quite interesting that Riley is not only a character, but also a location. But one of the scenes that we remember was seeing Riley move from Minnesota to San Francisco. and there are a lot of scenes along the way, but the scenery and the locations seem a bit different from a visual perspective. So were there techniques that were employed in animation in Inside Out? And if there were, could you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is, so with all the films we do, we start with research. And so we talk to psychologists, psychiatrists, neurologists, all sorts of experts that could help explain how many emotions there are, what do they do, what's their function. There is no consensus amongst the scientists how many there are. Some say 4, others say 16. A couple said 27. So it was really kind of up to us to figure out which emotions we wanted to represent and which to leave out. We did experiment with some other ones like hope and pride and schadenfreude and a bunch of these other emotions that didn't make the cut. We wanted it to be a small enough group to be interesting. There might be a lot of fighting and discussion amongst them because everyone has a different idea on what would be best for Riley. But not so big that you're like, wait, who's that guy again? And you want to have a small enough group to really understand the dynamic. So that's how we ended up at those 5. In terms of the drive out, we wanted to represent, so I grew up in Minnesota myself, and we would drive to California almost every summer because we had family that lived out in Los Angeles. So I know that drive pretty well, and we wanted to represent all the different places across the United States. And so if it looks a little different, it's because we had to do those shots in a very non-conventional way. We built the shots. We would add matte painting and kind of fill in the richness through paint as opposed to modeling every little crack in the rocks, for example. So it might have a slightly different look than the rest of the film, but that was intentional because we wanted it to feel different, like you're moving now from the comfort of Minnesota into adulthood, which is what that move symbolizes for us.
네, 정말 많은 분들이 다른 생각을 가지고 계셔서 협업 끝에 나온 결론인 것 같은데요. 저는 관객 입장에서 보면서 가장 아이들로부터 가질 수 있는 원초적인 감정 5가지가 참 잘 선택됐다라는 생각이 들더라고요. 자, 이제 다음 질문으로 넘어가겠습니다. 다음은 저쪽에 계신 분 갔다가 제가 가운데로 오겠습니다. 네.
예, 무비라이징의 최재필 기자라고 합니다. 예, 처음에 인사이드아웃 줄거리를 들었을 때 어떻게 이 내용이 표현되고 완성될까 이렇게 생각했었는데 아주 의외로 뛰어난 상상력으로 완성되었던 것 같습니다. 특히 극중 장면에서 추상적 개념에 들어오는 부분들 표현하기가 쉽지 않았을 텐데 표현 장면이 의외로 대범했고 인상적이었는데 이 부분을 완성하기 위해서 혹시 참고하신 예술 작품이나 어떤 요소들이 있었는지 좀 알고 싶습니다.
Now, yeah, this is a fabulous movie, and looking at the story, it seems very intriguing. How are you actually going to express the story? How is it actually going to be implemented? And it seems the execution is very clever and very creative. One of the scenes that left a really strong impression was abstract land, and we were wondering how you're going to express it, and it seems very bold in how this was executed. And so where did you get the inspiration to express the storyline and especially things like the abstract land?
Well, thank you. That's good to hear. Abstract thought was one of the first things that so as we realized we get to take people into the mind, that's something that everyone is familiar with on one hand, but they've never seen before. So it's going to be comfortable but new for people, which is a great place to be because I think we're always looking for something new when you go to the movies. You don't want to see the same old thing. And yet if it's too new, then you don't have any relationship to it, and it's just, you don't have a way to understand it. So this was a really rich fertile ground to be on. What we did was to make a big list of all locations that we could think of, like long-term memory, the stream of consciousness. I'm not sure if some of these language things translate, but in American and English we'll say stream of consciousness or a train of thought, some of these kind of ideas. And so we were able to represent some. Others we chose not to do. Like we had brainwashing, which is another sort of play on words for English. Abstract thought was one of those that as soon as it was on the list, I was like, that has got to be in the movie because it's a chance for us. A lot of us came from short films, and there's some great short films that have been done around the world that really push the limits and show what animation is capable of. This was an idea like that, where we thought, okay, no other medium could do this. We could literally show the characters changing and becoming these strange shapes and at the same time represent this part of the brain that is able to abstract from real life into conceptual things. For example, you know, and it happens at a later age. So like a 3-year-old won't understand the concept of a number 5. They might understand there are 5 apples, but only later are you able to comprehend some of these more abstract concepts. So it was a chance to fit into something that actually exists, but show it in a way that could only be done in animation.
아, 정말 만화가 아니고서는 표현해낼 수 없는 장르가 아니었나 말씀 들으니까 더 동감이 되네요. 자, 다음은 저희가 가운데 분을 먼저 한다고 그랬는데 그 마이크가 지금 저쪽에 먼저가 있어서 하고요. 그 다음 마이크를 요 가운데로 좀 부탁드리겠습니다. 네.
네, 안녕하세요. 저 경향신문 이혜인 기자입니다. 저 영화 너무 잘 봤고, 그 칸에서도 보고 이제 오늘까지 2번 봤는데 다 너무 재밌었습니다. 그래서 볼수록 슬픔의 역할이 눈에 더 들어오는데, 영화 속에서는 슬픔을 굉장히 부정적인 감정으로만 그리지 않고 중요한 역할로 표현한 것 같습니다. 그래서 슬픔이란 감정에 대해서 어떻게 생각하고 어떤 식으로 표현하고 싶었는지 궁금합니다.
So thank you for the movie. It was fabulous. I saw it first at Cannes, and this is the second time I saw it, and it's still great. And watching the movie, it seems like sadness plays a very important role. You're not just negative about sadness, but you have an intended role for sadness to play. So how did this come about?
Well, thank you. That's something that we kind of capitalized on our own feelings about sadness. We spend a lot of time trying to avoid feeling sad. We think of it as a negative thing. We don't want sadness in our life. Even as parents, we want our children to be happy. We try to make their lives comfortable and make sure that everything is just right. Unfortunately, life is not like that. It's full of unexpected disappointment and loss and things like this. And that's where, when we started doing research about the purpose of sadness, we were surprised how useful it is as an emotion. It forces you to slow down, because if you have an enormous loss in your life, say your parents die or something, you can't just go back to work the next day like nothing happened. It's going to be different. Your life is now going to be changed. And sadness forces you to slow down and assess, how is my life going to be different? It also displays cues on your face, on your body posture, to other people in your tribe that you might need help, that you're not able to go on and feed yourself and take care of yourself, that you might need help. So it's a very communal emotion. It's an emotion that sort of brings people together if you allow yourself to feel sad. So it was at once very illuminating and a revolutionary kind of idea to play with. And felt like very deep, very emotional and important thing to say. So, you know, this whole film kind of appeared in layers. At the very beginning, it was just the fun of characters and the sort of broad comedy that could be. And then we started getting into, the locations, you know, the places we get to go are familiar, but we've never seen before, as I mentioned. And then as we really dug down there, we said, this has something pretty meaty to talk about, very emotional, and the very subject of emotions as characters lent to all that.
네, 저도 기쁜 것만 좋을 줄 알았는데 그 감독님 영화와 말씀을 통해서 슬픔이란 게 참 소중한 거구나라는 생각을 하게 됐습니다. 자, 다음 질문 주실 분으로 넘어가도록 할까요? 네.
안녕하세요. 저는 매거진 M 기자 김나연이라고 합니다. 저는 영화를 보면서 많이 울고 웃었는데, 이제 영화를 다 보고 나니 이 영화가 잊고 살았던 그 예전의 꿈, 그리고 그 꿈들이나 상상의 세계를 잃어버리면서 어른이 되어가는 과정을 담은 우화라는 생각이 들더라고요. 그런 점에서 업이나 토이스토리 같이 이제 닥터 감독님이 예전에 연출했거나 원안을 썼던 장작들과 주제가 연결된다는 생각이 들었는데요. 이렇게 이 주제를 계속 다루는 이유가 무엇인지, 그리고 이 같은 주제를 이제 여러 소재로 풀어내는 그런 비결은 또 무엇인지 궁금합니다.
The movie was fabulous. I cried and laughed throughout the entire movie.
Thank you.
But it actually made me think about the dreams that I had forgotten along the way while I was growing up, and the imaginativeness, the creativeness that I had forgotten or left behind as I was growing up. So it seems like a story about a child becoming an adult. And you seem to have expressed these types of growing up pains or processes in Up and Toy Story, either as a director or as a writer. And is there a reason why you particularly like this topic of growing up, and why? And if so, what's been your secret to success in really expressing this process?
I think a lot of us at Pixar are struggling yet with the idea that we have to be adults, that we want to continue to live life the way we did as kids. And, to some degree, our job allows us to do that, so we're pretty fortunate. But it is something that I think with every film that I've worked on, you go in with a certain amount of confusion and insecurity and questioning. You don't know where it's going to lead exactly, but there's something that you can just feel that is drawing you in, that is, you can't stop thinking about this idea. So it just seems like more than I would like to admit, I'm drawn in and find the films more than making them. So it's a discovery process, I guess is what I'm trying to say, making these films. And you're really led by an inner sense of questioning and wonder, almost more than you're able to control consciously. So there's obviously something going on down there in myself, and I'm not the only one at Pixar that kind of continue to struggle with letting go of and understanding what it is to be an adult, and yet hold on to the important things that are that make us human and relate back to what it's like being a kid.
네. 자, 그럼 다음 질문으로 또 넘어가도록 하겠습니다. 네.
네, 안녕하세요. 일간스포츠 김현지 기자고요. 질문이 총 3개인데 정리해서 얘기하자면 첫 번째는 아까 전에 질문에서는 이제 슬픔의 감정이 굉장히 중요했다라고 했는데 저도 그 의견에 동의를 하는데요. 근데 실질적인 리더는 조이가 리더 역할을 한 것 같았는데 리더를 조이로 둔 이유가 궁금하고, 두 번째 질문은 사람이 감정의 변화가 성장을 하거나 뭐 많은 변화가 있었던 시기가 한국에서는 중2병이라 그래서 15살, 한국 나이로 15살을 꼽는데, 이 감독님께서는 11살을 그 감정의 변화를 시기를 하는 나이를 정한 이유가 궁금하고, 또 세 번째 질문은 마지막에 보면 사춘기 버튼이 있던데, 시즌2를 사춘기를 겪는 주인공을 염두에 두고 그런 버튼을 만든 건지 궁금합니다.
So it's a three-part question. And the first question is that I completely agree with you in that sadness is a very important emotion, but it seems like the actual leader of the 5 emotions is joy. And why was that? Let me just run through the other 2 as well. Okay. And it also seems like, well, emotions seem to change as we grow up. And in Korea, we call it a 8th grader disease. And so you basically hit puberty at the age of 15. But here you've set it on an 11-year-old. And why was that? And the final question is that there seems to be a puberty button at headquarters. And is that sort of something that you're using or sort of sharing as a sequel to this current film? So the first question being, sadness is very important, but why is joy the leader?
For us, I think we all want to be happy in our lives. I think this is fairly universal, that we want life to go well, we want to be happy. As parents, we want our children to be happy. But life is not always like that. It's full of complexity and disappointment and loss. And so that's where you start to realize, okay, joy can't be in control all the time. That's where all of these other emotions come in. And the power of sadness is really important in those cases. So it felt like a story that we could all relate to, the sort of irrational desire, not irrational, but impossible dream of being happy all the time. We all kind of want that, but it's not real, unfortunately. And so how then are we going to deal with that? So that just felt like a very truthful place to start as a storyteller. Remind me again of the second question.
Second question is why 11 years old? Because in Korea, it's the 8th grader, which is a 15-year-old disease.
Yeah, interesting. In the U.S., it's around 6th grade that I've noticed, because I've given a lot of talks in classes, and of course, growing up myself, and have friends who are teachers. 5th graders are wonderful. They're still got a sense of innocence and joy of learning. And then around 6th grade, at least in the U.S., is when kids start to get a little cynical and there's a big change. Talking to parents with kids, some said, oh no, my kid, it was quite later that this change happened. Others said, oh, my 9-year-old is already going through this. So 11 was the age of my daughter when it happened to her, and it seemed like a good starting point for us. And then the last question
was the puberty button.
Right. The puberty button is not actually supposed to be a button so much as an alarm that might go off at some point. And so the characters don't know what that is yet, and they're going to be in for trouble when it happens. But I don't think, so far we've not thought about any sort of sequel. We're just happy after 5 years that we actually finished the movie and that people get to see it, and we're happy at that.
5년간 고생하셔서 일단은 좀 쉬시고 싶은 것 같고요. 아이들이 문제 있는 나이야 11살, 15살 뿐이겠습니까? 요즘 미운 7살, 미운 6살, 미운 5살까지 내려갔다고 하는데, 네, 어쨌든, 조금씩 아이들은 다 항상 그런 어려움이 있는 것 같습니다. 자, 마지막 질문 받아보도록 하겠습니다. 저희가 시간 관계상 질문 부탁드릴게요.
네. 이디어스의 글을 쓰고 있는 성상님이라고 합니다. 영화 잘 보았고요. 영화 5가지의 감정을 의인하는 캐릭터 나오지만, 이 영화에서 특히 포커스에 서는 두 감정이 기쁨과 그 슬픔인데, 사실 전반부에서 또 계속 메인 포커스에는 기쁨이 제dat고, 슬픔 같은 경우는 아예 그러니까 카메라에 잡히지 않을 정도로 그러니까 계속 소외받는 모습을 보이다가 뒤에서는 결국 그 둘이 결국 전면에 서게 되고, 결국 결과적으로 그 두 감정이 결코 상반된 것이 아니라 연결돼 있다는 걸 보여줍니다. 어찌 보면 그 두 캐릭터의 의인하다는 모습에서 두 색깔의 머리 색깔이 공통적으로 파란색 톤으로 설정된 것이 사실 이러한 설정을 더 극대화시킨 게 아닌가 싶을 정도 들었는데요. 그 두 감정을 전면에 놓은 이유나 아니면 또 결국 전반부에 나왔던 그 두 감정이 후반부에 와서 서로 이해하는 것에 대해서 냈던 이유가 궁금합니다. 감사합니다.
So once again, fabulous movie. 5 years of hard work. I think you have well-deserved rest coming. And we'd like to ask more about the 5 emotions. And of the 5, it seems that joy and sadness are the 2 focal points. But in the beginning of the movie, it seems like sadness isn't even in the picture. The focus is all on joy. But as the movie progresses, we see more and more focus on sadness. And it seems to be saying that they're not conflicting emotions, but they're connected emotions. And we might even, we saw a bit of personification of the 2 characters have that connection by having, well, the same color hair. Joy has blue hair. So was that intended? And why were these 2 emotions the main focal points? And why did you decide to deliver the whole story based on their relationship?
Well, I think any movie is about, to me, the backbone of any film is relationships. So no matter how high a concept or bizarre the world is, it's ultimately the interest for me is going to come down to how characters relate to each other and how one character butting up against another character ends up changing who that character is and what they believe. And that was certainly the case here. We as I mentioned, we all want to be happy, so it seemed like a very relatable thing to start with our main character as Joy, and yet she, as a character, starts to slowly understand that sadness is necessary. And so, yeah, we wanted Joy as a design to have kind of all the characters, the most complexity of color. Her dress in the film is more kind of green. She's got blue hair, so she's less monochromatic than, say, like Disgust, who's all kind of shades of green, or Fear, who's all shades of purple. So Joy has the most visual complexity to kind of echo her role in the film. And the blue hair was a very intended connection to sadness. We wanted sadness at the beginning of the film to not be so obvious that the movie's going to be about Joy understanding sadness. So we wanted to sneak up on the audience a little and just plant little hints that sadness, something is going wrong with sadness, so that is a relationship that really comes to the front in the second act of the film. And then, of course, sadness as a character is what ends up bumping up against Joy and ultimately changing her to the point where Joy realizes she can't hold on to her kid anymore. This is going to be her journey, just like my journey as a parent. You know, you want to preserve and hold on to your kids. You want to keep them as babies as long as you can. And even these moments that you feel very proud of them, when they go off to kindergarten for the first time or graduate from 6th grade, or my son now has gone off to college, and that's a very emotional time. You feel proud and it's beautiful what's happening. At the same time, you can't help but feel a sense of loss, that something has gone away, that I'm not going to be sitting on the floor playing with them, playing trains and dolls anymore. My relationship with that relationship is gone forever, and that's, to me, very sad, but also beautiful and necessary. And because of that complexity, that seemed like a great area to be hunting for in terms of storytelling, because I think it will relate to a lot of people. I hope it will.
자, 그럼 이제 감독님의 마지막 인사 말씀을 드릴 텐데요. 그 마지막 인사 말씀하시고 헤어질 때 지금 이 카메라를 통해서 여러분들 모습이 나가고 있어서요. 기자님들 제가 볼 때 다 디즈니하고 픽사의 팬이신 것 같아서 감독님 인사하실 때 여러분들도 이렇게 한번 손을 흔들어 주시면 어떨까? 이따 마지막에, 지금은 말고 그렇게 부탁을 드리겠습니다. 마지막으로 관객분들에게 영화를 통해서 전하고 싶은 메시지와 함께 인사 말씀 부탁드릴게요.
So, Pete, thank you for your time. I mean, you've been very engaging in the interview. And due to a lack of time, we'd like to close with one final message from you. What do you want to say through this movie? And what would you like the audience and the Korean press to take away from this film?
Well, I think a lot of times we think of many emotions as negative. Anger, for example, you think, oh, well, you don't want to be angry. It just gets you into trouble. Fear prevents you from, discovering new things. It's a bad thing that needs to be conquered. And yet, for me, and I think this is true for most people, if you think about the most important thing in your life, it's your relationship with family and close friends. And what is at the key, at the root of all that? It is, for me, as I think about people that I feel the closest to, yes, they're people that I've had wonderful, happy times with, but they're also people that I've been angry at and scared for and sad with as we experience loss together. And so this film is about emotions, which are the very key to the most important thing in our lives, and that is the relationship and the community that we have with other people. And I think that is a very universal thing that will appeal to everyone around the world.
네, 고맙습니다. 그러면 저희가 먼저 인사드릴까요?
All right. And so would you like to say goodbye to the Korean press who are here today? They're probably all fans of Pixar and
그렇습니다.
Disney
여기 카메라
and
있는데
you
여러분.
as well.
손 한번
Thank you
흔들어.
guys for coming. It's been wonderful talking with you. Next time, let's do it in person.
네, 그랬으면 좋겠네요. 정말 다음번에 직접 뵀으면 좋겠습니다. 지금까지 우리 피톡톡 감독님과 함께 했고요. 지금 계속 지켜보고 계시니까 여러분들 편하게 행동하시면 될 것 같습니다. 인사이드아웃은 7월 9일 날 개봉합니다. 정말 사랑스러운 영화, 마음이 따뜻해지는 영화, 좋은 글 많이 부탁드리고요. 그리고 입소문 많이 내주시고요. 그리고 저희는 여기서 이만 인사드리도록 하겠습니다. 지금까지 토요일 주행주씨 그리고 저는 유시연이었습니다. 고맙습니다.